What are you doing?
Grüße friends, and welcome back to Opus Elenae, where we didn't have time for filming intros. Instead, we're just going to jump right into this week's project. You may remember that one of my ongoing, that is, never-ending, long-term projects is my embroidered key pattern surcoat from Sabriel by Garth Nix. Well, the Old Kingdom books, of which Sabriel is the first, are some of my favorites out there, and it will surprise no one who knows me that the key surcoat is not even remotely the only historically inspired cosplay I want to make from this series. The second book, Lirael, takes place 14 years after the events of Sabriel. Without any real spoilers, the book follows the titular character, Lirael, as she comes of age in a place she doesn't feel any real connection to, learns the value of her own skills on her adventures, and comes to realize that she is the kind of person who makes history instead of merely observing it. She grows up in a sprawling complex within and under a glacier, among her extended family who all have the talent of seeing the future in the ice surrounding them. Lirael ends up working at the Glacier Library, a vast and mysterious complex full of books and specimens and ancient dangerous magic. I wanted to do a historically based costume for Lirael, and what better inspiration for a glacier-dwelling society than the Vikings? As you can see here, I've got a basic idea for Lirael's Viking-inspired librarian outfit. Because the job of librarian is an active one, often resulting in armed fights and rescues of fellow librarians, I wanted to make this outfit along masculine lines, with a knee-length tunic and trousers for full range of motion. The tunic will be made from unbleached linen and sewn to the specifications of a rectangularly constructed medieval garment with underarm gussets, side gores, and a keyhole neckline. The rest of the outfit? Well, that will have to wait for the next videos. For now, grab yourself a cuppa. Today I am drinking Civil Disobedience by August Uncommon. It's a smoky black tea with notes of cardamom and tobacco. Just the kind of thing I want to be drinking during a winter weather warning. As always, I love hearing what you're drinking, but I'd also love to hear your favorite book recommendations too. I got over 100 discreet responses on Instagram when I asked. Let's get into it. Firstly, as always, it's time to iron the washed linen. I hate ironing less now than I did before I got a gravity feed iron, but it's still tedious. What you don't hear is the horror podcasts playing in the background to give my mind something to do instead of mentally checking out. I decided to use an unbleached linen for this tunic as a nod to the description of working clothes being a knee-length gray cotton shirt and blue woolen leggings. Since cotton wasn't readily available in 9th century Scandinavia, I'm using the leftover linen from my Anglo-Saxon underdress. I'm using the standard rectangular construction for this tunic, a rectangle for front and back, tapered trapezoidal sleeves, a square underarm gusset, triangular gore set into the side seams for ease of motion, and a keyhole neckline with facing. Sometimes additional gores are inserted into the front and back, as I did with the dragon tunic, but I was working with limited yardage, and for working clothing, the extra fullness isn't strictly necessary. For the neckline, I have a keyhole template that I will trace onto a scrap of linen. I'll cut around the outside of the facing, but I find it easier to leave the middle intact until after I sew it onto the tunic. It just stabilizes everything better. You may notice that I went straight into the neckline instead of sewing the shoulder seams as I normally do for my first step. That's because this tunic doesn't have shoulder seams. Because it's knee length rather than floor length, I had enough continuous yardage to cut the front and back in one piece. I marked the center where the seam would normally go to be able to line up the neckline facing and sleeves properly, and then was off to the races. I've pinned the facing to what will be the outside of the tunic, since I want the facing to end up on the inside when it's flipped, and I'm using the tracing marks as a guide for sewing the collar seam. For the slit, I'll sew down one side of the marked line and up the other, leaving a very narrow seam allowance on either side so that the slit doesn't gap when worn. After that's finished, I'll cut out the center of the neckline and clip the curves and corners before turning the facing to the inside of the tunic and pressing the seams flat. Next things next, I will turn the edges of the facing under and whip stitch them down with some of Burnley & Trowbridge's lovely 83 natural linen thread, which I have cut into some manageable sewing lengths, waxed and pressed. It really does make a heck of a difference when sewing. Some people prefer to leave the neckline treatment until the end of the process, but I like to get it out of the way at the beginning when the tunic body fabric is still flat and much easier to maneuver through my sewing machine. Thank you to my newest coffee tier member, who's Taylor. Your support makes this so much easier. Stay tuned after this ad break for the rest of the tunic construction. After the neckline is done, I'll move on to the construction of the tunic. My normal order of operations is as follows: shoulder seams, if applicable, neckline treatment, sleeve shoulders, underarm gussets inserted, sleeve seams, sleeve hems, front and back gussets, if any. I like to do this before closing the side seams since I hand sew the top points of the gussets and it's easier to access that area before the side seams are sewn. Insert side gores, sew up side seams, and hem. Only after I sew the construction seams do I finish the allowances. Some people prefer to finish seams as they go, but I find that I get a cleaner finish and less bulky seams if I do it all at the end. These are finished with my preferred method of cutting one side of the seam allowances down by half and folding the other side over and whip stitching it flat to the body. I usually save hemming for last, and before I can do that, I have to trim down the extra gore fabric. When I attach the gores, I make sure to sew the on-grade sides of the gore triangle to each other and the bias sides to the tunic body. This minimizes any stretching that would result from sewing the bias sides together instead. So I'll use the length of the gore side seam as a guide for the curve of the tunic hem and cut away the excess. I forgot to film myself hemming, but it's just a simple double fold that is whip stitch into place. Nothing super fancy. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Stay tuned in the next couple of videos to see the rest of Lirael's Viking librarian outfit, hopefully with fewer logistic problems. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and if you like taking your chances with notifications, go ahead and click the bell. If you're interested in finding me on other social media, I am at Opus Elenae everywhere, and those links will all be in the description box. I'll also post the link to my Ko-fi where you can leave me a one-time tip, browse my web shop, or join my membership tiers for additional content. Until next time, be kind, do the work, continue supporting marginalized people, and keep creating. Hwyl!